Welcome to Ready or Not. Mike Henry from the Colvin Run Mill, the beautiful historic Colvin Run Mill, home of unparalleled ambiance and charm, in Great Falls, Virginia. And as the title of the session suggests, we're here to discuss the mutable aspects of museum careers. Change is not the exception, it is the rule. Adapting to, responding to, managing change has become an essential skill, an essential tool for the museum professional of the 21st century. Now, joining us today are 4 panel members who are certainly no strangers to change, and certainly no strangers to anybody in the Virginia museum community. Between them, they've held every officer position of the Virginia Association of Museums many times over. In fact, we have 2 former presidents and our current president of VAM here with us. And they're joining us to share their observations, their lessons learned on the challenges of managing change in the modern museum. Leading us off today will be Tracy Gillespie. Tracy has held 2 positions at the Loudon Museum, 2 leadership positions at Morven Park, and is currently the historic site supervisor for the Aldie Mill Historical Park.
At the museum where I eventually interned, at the museum that eventually hired me, very part-time, which was the Loudon Museum, a local history museum up in Leesburg, in, you guessed it, Loudon County. So okay, I could check off a few boxes. Then when it came time for a job change, it wasn't a drastic job change. I was staying with the same organization, but after 10 years I became the executive director. Which I never thought that would happen to me, but it did. And I went to Morven Park, which is a historic house museum, also in Leesburg. Still enthusiasm. It's amazing how you can find enthusiasm when you change jobs, especially sites. Suddenly you feel new again, and you can get enthusiastic about a job that you might have otherwise gotten a little bit tired of. And the maturity that I was gaining was now becoming the, oh my God, I'm 40. But, you know, there's years of experience back behind me. Finally, job number 5 is what I'm at now, and hopefully I think I'll be happy to stay there. You never know. Enthusiasm? Yes. New ideas? Thank God, yes. More training? Yes. More connections, still really important. And, you know, instead of the I'm 40, it's the, oh my God, yikes, I'm 50. Actually, now I'm a little more than 50, but anyway. So I've got those boxes checked that I think are important to have when you're looking at job change, or even if you're not looking at it, which most of us, let's face it, aren't really looking for it necessarily. It's going to kind of happen to us. Or maybe we're looking for it, but not exactly when it comes along. So you've got to have those boxes checked to have them ready.
Doug made the sage observation looking at this panel, that the panel had more degrees than a thermometer and more mileage than a 71 Oldsmobile.
Thanks a lot! You do have hot flashes, and that count as degrees.
Tracy, you're the hood ornament, though.
I'm a hood ornament.
Doug has held leadership positions at the Manassas Museum System, Pamplin Historical Park, Museum of the Confederacy, American Civil War Center at Historic Tredegar, and is currently the director of the Lynchburg Museum System.
Thanks. Well, this is an interesting panel. When Mike emailed me or called about this and change in the museum profession, I said at this point in time about all I've got left are war stories, and they said that'll be fine. So that's kind of what I know at this point. I'm in my 36th year working in museums and history in Virginia. My first 5 were as a public school teacher. And I'm in my 30th year working in museums. And, you know, when you're going into a new career, it never occurred to me that I would intern at the Smithsonian and then work at 5 different Virginia museums. I thought that I would find this really perfect, well-funded, pleasant museum, and I would go there and, like my parents had done, work my 30 or 40 years in one place. And as you can imagine, it didn't quite happen that way. But I've been fortunate to stay in the museum field, and also I've been fortunate to stay in Virginia. That's always been one of my criteria. certainly not everybody. But I've been fortunate in that way, and I have serendipitous nature and all that appeals to me. Some things that we all need to know that museum programs don't teach. How many days have I spent in the mechanical room with the people telling me that the chiller and the plenum are not talking to the actuator? And over the years, I've learned to fake it. I still don't know how that stuff works, but I can talk about it enough to motivate people to fix it. But I've often thought about, you get your master's degree and you intern here and you go there, and as soon as you get that first museum job, you're going to be down in that boiler room trying to figure out, it's like being on a spaceship. So that's tough for all of us. We usually take some coursework in security, in our museum academic training, but real-world security. People steal museum things, internal theft, janitorial, shoplifting type stuff, sticky-fingered tellers at the visitor service register. That's a really tough thing, and I certainly don't come at life as a very cynical, suspicious person, but in our world, we have to think about that. That's part of our stewardship. And Tracy's right about the budgets. I wrote down accounting and cash handling. Many of us get into the field because we love the history of the artifacts of the art, and then they throw us the spreadsheet, and the finance department calls, and you better pick that up if you don't have it. In retrospect, it would have been a great thing in some of my academics if I'd known or been advised to take some accounting. And you learn over a 30-year career with some of the stories I've just told you. You better document everything because you may need to be able to show how that path actually was followed. In closing, what gets you through this crazy career? And I think the golden rule: hard work, divine intervention, perseverance, having ethics. If you give up your ethics, there's not much left. And when the elected official calls and said, "I want my brother-in-law to get that printing job," you got a decision to make, and then you have to live with that decision. So that's important. What also gets you through are your colleagues, your family, and your friends. And I think a surrealistic sense of humor also seems to be a plus. P-I-S-C-A-T-O-R-I-A.
You didn't mention alcohol.
That is one of the get us through right.
Well, rounding the clubhouse turn here, Robin Reed. Rob's the former executive director of the Museum of the Confederacy, former project directors for the Smithsonian National Museum of American History, director of public history for Colonial Williamsburg, president of the Virginia Association Museum. Currently is the president of the National D-Day Foundation, vice president of Civil War Trails, Inc., and a museum assessment reviewer for the American Association of Museums.
Can't keep a job. Well, it's good to see so many familiar faces out here today. I guess I was going to say it gives you some sort of comfort, but it really doesn't. And it certainly is encouraging to see some new faces, so it's good to be here with you today. If you learned nothing from this panel today, and I suspect that you may not, please take this away when you leave this session. We, and Doug and I were counting this up on the phone just the other day, we have over 100 years of experience at this panel today, at least that much. But what you should know about that, and here's the deal, is that we're all still learning. We're all still making mistakes, and we're all still learning from those mistakes, sometimes not as quickly as we would like to. Since they gave their background, I wasn't going to do that, but I certainly will give you some insight on where I came from. I attended a 4-year military college, and then after that went to VCU, so I've been able to experience the whole strata of American life. Probably the thing that's helped me deal with staff the most is that I was a third grade elementary school teacher. And, oftentimes I've had staff just lay their heads on their desk until the 50 cents showed up on my desk. I was a swim coach, which really doesn't help you in the museum business except for the fact that you have to deal with parents. And that certainly has come in handy with dealing with volunteers and board members and things like that. I was a radio broadcaster. I worked in news for a while, and you'll be able to, when I tell you the rules of transition, you'll be able to see where that came from. And the thing I'm most proud of, I was the manager of a Haagen-Dazs ice cream store. I went to ice cream college in New York for 6 weeks, and I do have a diploma. Thank you very much. I've been really lucky in my museum experiences, and I'm going to share some of those experiences with you, and also I'm going to kind of give you my rule book on dealing with transitions. I certainly have been through some. My challenge at the Museum Confederacy was bringing a 19th century institution into the 20th century before the 21st century began. We just barely did that. We did something very innovative there. We decided to use collections to tell the stories. Something that I hadn't really done before. But I guess other than getting the executive match of Jefferson Davis restored, the thing that we're most proud of, and we have some Museum Confederacy veterans in here today, is putting together the Before Freedom Came exhibit, which dealt with African American life in the antebellum South. The story I'll tell you in relation to that, but I got an urgent call from the executive director one morning to come upstairs to his office. He was sitting behind his desk. He had his letter in front of him. He said, "Robin, we've gotten this letter from the National United Daughters of the Confederacy, and they've heard about the exhibit, and they're not going to give us any more money." And I said, "Well, boss," I said, "there are a couple things interesting about that letter. First of all, you know, our exhibit's not up, and so I don't know what they know about that." He said, "Well, they keep talking about the whip slave, the slave with the whip." And I said, "Well, you know, we've had a slave whip on display for about 6 years." "Well, but they're not going to give us any money." I said, "Well, let's see. Let's think about that for a minute. The National United Daughters of the Confederacy has never given us any money, so let's see." It calmed me down only marginally, but we did launch a very successful show, and it's something we're very proud of, and it traveled to Smithsonian, and it certainly helped put the Museum Confederacy on the map. Also, our rule of thumb at the Museum Confederacy, if you put together an exhibit that torqued off everybody, the liberals and the conservatives, then we've done a pretty good job. At the Smithsonian, the challenge there is that they're very linear thinkers at the Smithsonian, and they're very petrified of military history, primarily for the reason that they don't think military history is a legitimate subject, and that can be debated, and I think, but they were so fearful of putting together, and my job was to help manage and direct a project dealing with military exhibits. They were so petrified of the subject material that they decided to contract me, so when all hell broke loose on the controversies dealing with such a thing, they wouldn't have to fire in their permanent staff. They could just let the contractor go. So that was my role at the Smithsonian. But two very interesting things happened at the Smithsonian that I'd like to share. One, I had to put together a team. And you had to have, you know, a World War I expert, and a Revolutionary War expert, and a 20th century Cold War expert, and a guy who knew about aviation. I'm listening to all this, and I'm saying, well, let's talk about aviation for a second. Don't y'all have some aviation experts at the Smithsonian? They said, well, like who? We don't have any of those at the American History Museum. I said, but no, right down the mall, don't y'all have a little museum called like Air and Space? Well, no, we can't use any of those guys. And I said, well, okay. So we wound up going to the castle. How many people ever worked at the Smithsonian?